So today's job is a 2005 Volkswagen Passat. It has the 2-liter TDI diesel engine, and today we have to do timing belt water pump. So to do that, we have to take most of this plastic trim, front bumper, rad support, move it off, move it forward so we can get access down here, because there's not a lot of clearance here, as you can see. So the first thing we're going to do is set it up on the hoist, pull the front wheels, and continue from there. I'll take short little video clips along the way to bring you along. I'm not going to videotape the entire process, just short little clips and put them together. So there are 4 screws in the inner fender, 1, 2, 3, and 1 up here on each side. Take those out. Next, remove that underbelly pan. There's a bunch of fasteners, and then there's 2 more screws on each side of the inner fender skirt, Phillips screws, and set it off to the side. So next, remove the T30 bolts that go here. Normally you'd have to take this one out too, but the grill is broken on this car. Here I'll have to get this piece out because this is attached. The nut is turning. Then there are 4 clips on the bottom of the grill. You have to depress them in like this with a pick of some kind. The other Houdini clip is this link to the hood rod. This has to be carefully spread, and there's a little clip inside there that you have to lift up. So that's it. Once the grill comes off, then these screws come out, and then the bumper will come off. So that nut, which is like a mirror nut in the plastic frame here, was spinning, so I had to drill the head of the bolt off like so. So we can continue now. Now the front bumper comes off. You need to disconnect the fog light connectors if it's got fog lights, and the 2 marker light connectors. Nice time to replace those bulbs. And this one had a block heater cord going through the grill on the right side, so I had to cut the strap on that. So next comes off this plastic bumper filler. There are 5 screws, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This one was a 10 mil, the rest were T30s. That one was actually missing in there. I don't know if it was broken off or missing, so set that off to the side. Next we can go after these Torx bolts. There's 3 Torx bolts on this side and 3 Torx bolts on this side that we have to remove this, pull this bumper forward, and then this whole radiator support should come forward. So remove the T30 bolt from over here, and 1 on the other side similarly. Right here, this bracket's loose for whatever reason. 4 T45 bolts hold the bumper on. Reposition this air intake. I see the horn is rusted off here. I'm going to have to reattach that or do something with that. And then I put 2 longer 8mm bolts in the bumper so that the bumper can pull forward now. Take this cover off of the power steering and this harness bracket out of the way. There's enough movement in the hoses to allow this to come forward, and now we have enough room in the front here to get at the timing belt. I've removed the upper cover. There's a couple clips here, 1 on each side, and it pulls straight up. So now the next thing to do is to remove this cooling fan. There's a bolt from the back, through the back. I think it's a Torx bolt, but I have to double check. So it's an 8mm hex. You need an 8mm Allen socket and about a 1-inch extension and a flex-headed ratchet, and then you need to hold the end of the pulley with a pair of channel locks. I found that if you leave the belt on for now, it helps to keep the pulley from turning. So after you remove the serpentine belt, you can remove the serpentine belt tensioner. There's a 13mm bolt cap screw at the bottom that holds the spring-loaded tensioner, and a 6mm Allen bolt that holds it to the timing cover of the front of the engine. So I disconnected the lower right or left side intercooler pipe, just push the clip up, wiggle the hose out. I took off this lower aluminum motor mount, this one right here, for support. That'll give me more room to get at the crank bolts, crank pulley. And now we can take the AC belt tensioner off and take off the AC belt. So there's a rubber cover in the harmonic balancer that keeps these bolts behind there. These are 7 mil. I think they're 7 mil, 6 mil. 6 mil Allen heads that hold the crank pulley on. So loosen all the 4 bolts, but now we have to time the engine. So remove the two 13 millimeter bolts from the base of the alternator, right here and here. Cut the tie wrap on the coolant pipe. Disconnect the alternator control wires connector and the oil pressure sending unit. And I think I'm going to be able to just leave this hose attached and just take the housing off. This is the thermostat housing, I believe. Wow, everything's so brittle. Two 10 millimeter bolts and we'll have the thermostat off. So there's the thermostat out, the thermostat and O-ring. You can move that pipe off to the side enough to get in there. Now we'll clean the rust around the outside, put the new thermostat back in, and start reassembling this thing. So I find it beneficial if you reposition these sliding bolts here, or sliding nuts on the back of the alternator, because it'll be tight going back in on these ears. And the way to do that is to use a 19 mil socket, a 12 point socket, and the one you're using to turn the crankshaft, and an 8 mil bolt and a flat washer, and just tighten the bolt up and it'll pull that ear out. You only need to move it a few thousandths of an inch. You can see this one I moved just about a millimeter. That'll make that alternator slip right on there nice and easy. Yeah, that one moved a few thou. So we'll go ahead and put the alternator back on. Maybe I'll leave it off to the side because that'll give me a little bit more room putting the belt on. So there's the new water pump. I like to compare it to the old one, make sure it's the same height. Going to put some dielectric grease on the O-ring seal. I've cleaned the housing and the block, and we're ready to reinstall the water pump. So there's the water pump reinstalled. I wanted to show you this timing mark. There's a timing mark on the tool, as you can see there. Let me try and zoom in on that a little bit. Okay. So there's a timing mark on the tool, lines up with that notch on the crank sprocket, and the pin in the tool intersects with the timing cover. Now you can take the little knob off to make it more visible here, because that knob gets in the way when you're looking at it. So that is lined up, and of course the upper mark is lined up, locked with the dowel pin here, and we're ready to put the timing belt back on. So there's the belt installed. I find it easiest if you put it on the pulleys about halfway. Make sure you get all the tension out of the drive side. Leave this idler off until you're ready to tension this. Make sure that the ear goes back in the timing cover there, or in the engine block, cylinder head I guess that is, and then pull the pin and turn it until that little arrow is lined up. Next we're going to pull the pins here, the locking tools, turn the engine over 2 revolutions and make sure everything lines up. So turn the engine 2 turns, put the fixture back on the crank, it lines up, this pin fits in place. Now I do want to retension this just ever so slightly, because after the belt's taken a set, it needs to be tweaked just a little bit. And that's basically it. The rest is putting the timing covers on and reverse procedure. Now I recommend to put Loctite on all the fasteners in here. This is 20 Newton meters, I did not have to disturb this adjustment here. They talk about doing that if it doesn't line up, so it lines up perfectly. This pin fits in here beautifully. So we should be good to go. Again, I'm just going to retweak that timing belt tensioner. So there's the lower timing covers on, and the AC belt. Got a new AC belt. We're ready to put this through bolt from the back below the alternator that holds the fan clutch on. Goes down in through here, through this hole in the back. And I put Loctite on it. And we're going to tighten that up. And then put this serpentine belt on. If you pre-route it around there, it's a lot easier than trying to do it after the fact. So the front bumper or rad support is pushed back. I've got this bracket bolted back on. Got the intercooler pipe reconnected, cleaned it out. I think I'm going to drill a small hole in the intercooler because there appears to be some oil seeping past the turbo. So usually drill a small hole here, like with a 1/8 drill bit, and let the intercooler drain out. Maybe it's already got one. Looks like it's already got one right there. So I'm going to take that out and let it drain just to make sure there's no oil in the intercooler. So reattach the bumper with the 4 bolts on each side using the original markings that the washers, impressions the washers left on there to ensure that the bumper is aligned at least to where it was before. Now we're going to see if we can fix this horn bracket. It's rusted off. See if I can make some little bracket here. So there's the horn bracket repaired, and we're ready to put the front bumper cover back on. So there, it's pretty much back together. I'm just filling the cooling system, letting it burp a few times. I've changed the oil in it. I've got a new fuel filter to change. That's the fuel filter there. I'm going to replace the fuel filter for the customer. And then we'll put the engine cover back on after it's started and run up to temperature. I still have to put the belly pan back on. But that's pretty much it.